3 miles from the launch pad in Boca Chica, Texas, thousands of people stand in the dirt with their phones held high, waiting for the ground to shake. They are watching a 400-foot steel rocket ignite its engines, punch through the atmosphere, and do something that was considered science fiction just a decade ago. It is an awe-inspiring display of human engineering. But 4,000 miles away, on the trading floors of Wall Street, a very different kind of spectacle is taking place. Investment bankers, hedge fund managers, and venture capitalists are looking at that exact same rocket, but they are not looking at the fire or the technology. They are looking at a giant financial machine designed to turn retail enthusiasm into institutional exits. My name is Vicky, and if you have been tempted to buy into the massive hype surrounding SpaceX, you need to stop and hear what is actually happening behind closed doors. Because while the media sells you a story about colonizing Mars, Wall Street is setting up one of the most calculated valuation traps in modern stock market history. To see the trap, you have to look at the massive gap between what a company achieves in the sky and what it earns on a balance sheet. Nobody can deny that SpaceX is a phenomenal technological success. They conquered reusable rocketry, shattered NASA's old cost structures, and built a global satellite network that operates as a functional utility. If business success was measured purely by cultural impact and engineering breakthroughs, this company would be worth trillions. But the stock market does not pay you for cultural impact. The stock market pays you for net cash flow, and that is where the narrative starts to break down. When a company lists on the public market at a valuation well north of $1 trillion, it becomes one of the most expensive entities on the planet relative to its actual income. Right now, the company is valued at roughly 50 times its annual revenue. To put that in plain English, if every single dollar of revenue the company brought in was pure profit, meaning $0 spent on rocket fuel, $0 spent on salaries, and $0 spent on satellite manufacturing, it would still take 50 years just to pay back the initial price of the stock. In reality, aerospace is one of the most capital-heavy, low-margin industries in existence. When you pay 50 times revenue for a heavy hardware business, you aren't investing in growth. You are paying a luxury tax on a dream. Where is all this revenue supposedly coming from? Most people assume the core business is launching rockets for national governments and telecom giants. But the launch market itself is surprisingly small. There are only so many commercial satellites that need to go into orbit every year, and military launch contracts, while lucrative, are strictly capped by government defense budgets. The launch division is a steady, solid business, but it is not an exponential growth engine. In fact, over 70% of all the rocket launches executed over the past 2 years weren't for paying outside clients at all. They were internal missions designed to carry the company's real commercial bet into low Earth orbit, Starlink. Starlink is presented to investors as a high-margin internet subscription business with infinite scale. You put dish antennas on roofs, collect $80 to $100 a month from millions of subscribers across the globe, and watch the cash roll in. But satellite internet suffers from a massive physical limitation that software companies never have to deal with: orbital decay. When a company like Netflix or Microsoft gains 10 million new users, they add a few server racks and their profit margins go up. But Starlink satellites sit in low Earth orbit, where atmospheric drag constantly pulls them down. Every single satellite launched has a maximum lifespan of roughly 5 to 7 years before it burns up in the atmosphere. That means Starlink is caught on a permanent, endless treadmill. They cannot simply build a network and collect profit. They have to continuously manufacture, launch, and replace thousands of satellites every few years just to keep their existing service from collapsing. A huge chunk of the revenue Starlink generates doesn't go to shareholders. It gets plowed right back into the engine room just to maintain the baseline. As Starlink expands into developing nations to hit its subscriber targets, it runs into another financial bottleneck. A rural household in South America or Southeast Asia cannot afford the same monthly subscription price as a household in suburban Texas. To gain market share, service fees and hardware costs have to be discounted heavily in foreign markets. This causes the average revenue per user to slide downward over time. To make up for those shrinking international margins, prices get pushed higher on domestic customers, driving up cancellation rates and opening the door for terrestrial fiber optic networks and competing satellite providers to step in. Then we have the grand vision that captures everyone's imagination: Starship. Starship is designed to be the largest, most powerful transportation system ever built, capable of carrying massive payloads to the Moon and Mars. It is a stunning vision, but from an investment standpoint, it is a massive cash furnace. Developing a totally new, deep space rocket architecture requires endless billions of dollars in testing, infrastructure, and regulatory reviews. Every test delay and every technical obstacle burns through cash reserves at an astonishing rate. If Starship takes longer than expected to become commercially viable, the financial burden falls directly back onto the earnings of the core business. When you buy the stock at peak valuation, you are effectively paying to fund the world's most expensive experimental science project, while early insiders reap the rewards. To make matters even more complicated, corporate boundaries have blurred. The company has increasingly tied its future to massive orbital artificial intelligence networks and deep tech partnerships. While launching space-based AI data centers sounds cutting edge, it fundamentally shifts the business model. Instead of remaining a focused aerospace contractor, it becomes a high-risk tech conglomerate. Building and cooling high-performance compute clusters in space requires breathtaking capital outlays. Money that could have been used to build a cash reserve or pay dividends gets diverted into speculative projects with unproven returns. This brings us to how Wall Street actually operates during a massive public market debut. Long before everyday investors can buy a single share, venture capital funds, private equity firms, and corporate insiders bought into the business at private valuations that were a tiny fraction of today's price. They entered when the company was valued at $20, $50, or $80 billion. For those early players to turn their paper wealth into real, spendable cash, they need a massive pool of buyers to sell their shares to. That is where the public market comes in. Wall Street investment banks launch a massive publicity campaign, hyping the stock on every financial news network and filling headlines with grand visions of the future. They build an overwhelming sense of urgency, making regular people feel like if they don't buy in immediately on day one, they are missing out on the opportunity of a lifetime. The moment the stock opens for trading, millions of excited retail buyers jump in at the absolute top price. At that exact moment, institutional insiders execute their exit strategy, quietly unloading millions of shares into the buying frenzy and locking in thousands% returns. Once the initial media circus fades and the hype cools off, the cold reality of quarterly financial reports takes over. The market stops trading on dreams and starts calculating actual profits, debt obligations, and profit margins. Time and time again, we have seen massive, highly anticipated public debuts undergo painful, multi-year downward price corrections as the stock slowly bleeds down to match its real economic value. We have seen this movie before. During the dot-com boom, companies with incredible, world-changing technology saw their stock prices bid up to astronomical levels. Outstanding enterprises like Cisco and Amazon were genuinely changing the world, but investors who bought them at the absolute peak of the 1,999 hype had to wait over a decade just to break even on their initial investment. The companies didn't fail, but the people who overpaid for them suffered immense financial damage because they confused a great company with a good stock price. If you want to build real, lasting wealth, you have to separate your emotions from your portfolio. You can admire the incredible engineering, watch the rocket launches, and appreciate the technological leaps without risking your hard-earned savings on an overvalued asset. Before you put a single dollar into a high-hype stock, ask yourself 3 simple questions. Are you buying this because the financial math makes sense, or because you are afraid of missing out? Is the company generating true, unencumbered free cash flow? Or is it continually burning cash to maintain its operations? And most importantly, are you getting a fair price, or are you paying a premium so early insiders can cash out? Protecting your money is not about chasing the loudest headline or buying into the grandest narrative at the highest possible price. It is about patience, discipline, and understanding that on Wall Street, valuation always matters eventually. Let the crowd chase the hype at the peak. Keep your head clear, protect your capital, and wait for the numbers to align with reality before you make your move.